everyone seems to be fine and on the same page, but it's just, while it's correct, it's also heart-wrenching. And so you're trying to be there, and all we are is over the moon excited that everything we ever saw for our life is finally coming true. But it was really important to also see and acknowledge and try to comprehend that everyone has losses.
What's happening, my friends? Welcome to another episode of Car Seats and Coffee. Today, I have my friend that we met in Arizona, Eric Sciotto, on the show. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Doing well. So I love that I say that. I say my friend as if we've had this like long-lasting friendship when we
It's like weeks long.
Yeah, it was a one-time awesome opportunity in that one coffee shop that one day kind of thing.
It was a bizarre set of circumstances, and then we're also neighbors, which is crazy.
Right?
Sometimes you got to fly to Phoenix to find your neighbor in Utah.
Right? It was so strange. Like when we were leaving, I don't even think you informed us. It was your friend that was like, "Oh, by the way, he's gonna fly back to Utah in a couple of weeks." I was like, "Wait, what? Like, how random is this?" So,
Pretty strange.
Yes. So, Eric, jump in. Tell the people that are listening right now just a little bit about yourself.
All right. My name is Eric, and I'm new to Utah, and I freaking love it here. I was East Coast for a very, very long time. I moved there to pursue my dreams of having a musical theater career, and so I lived in and around New York City from '97 to last year, which is crazy. And I've been a musical theater performer and for years on Broadway and on tour and in regional theaters. And then I began flying around teaching that and doing master classes. And then I started parlaying that into directing and choreography. And so my career has taken me all over the place. And eventually living in New York and around New York and just being a slave to that city drove me kind of crazy. Sorry to say anything disparaging about New York City right now. It was everything I needed it to be for a very long time. That said, my husband and I wanted to have kids. We always wanted to have kids. That was a huge part of our life, and a huge part of what brought us together is that we shared that same dream, to have Broadway careers and a family. But there you have it. So we now have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they're somewhere on screens because that's what you do in a pandemic, apparently. And we started pursuing other options, and now we both moved, or the whole family moved to Salt Lake City to teach in the musical theater department at the University of Utah, which has been spectacular. So David is the assistant professor of musical theater there, and I was just moving along. I could still fly around and work, and then they called me up a few months before and said, "With you here, it seems weird. We should have you teach as well. Will you be an adjunct professor?" So I teach there as well, and it's been like the best. It's just been the best thing for us and for the family, for the kids. It's been fantastic. We love it here. That's my basic story.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many elements of this that I'm just like, I'm grasping onto, because my wife and I both work our like traditional jobs in the same, like we both work for the health department. So to know like you and your husband both work in the theater program up at the U, like explain that, because so many people are like, "Oh, I couldn't imagine working with my spouse like doing this," but how does it work out for you guys really well?
It actually does. We don't see each other very much, so that's helpful. No, honestly, so I was still performing a ton and didn't really feel that anymore, but it was our main source of income. And David, we're 45 and 49, so it just kind of was taking a toll, and trying to have a traditional family and be gone every single night. It just, so much of it was not cool. So I kind of pushed, and he decided, and we both pushed to like look for these academic jobs. So David got hired to be the assistant professor of musical theater, which means he has a large job, but planning meetings and productions and things like that. And then my adjunct teaching is in the mornings. I teach dance for them, and all the musical dance literally every morning. So I teach the high level for the musical theater department. And so I go to work and he deals with getting our kids to school, and then I come home and then we, have lunch, and then he goes to work. So it's actually been, the schedule of it's been great. We have worked together in the past. We actually met in a Broadway show, which was Annie Get Your Gun with Bernadette Peters. So we met because we both ended up in the same cast at the same time. And so we're used to having a working relationship, which is totally fine. And then since then, he's been the assistant on things that I've been in and whatnot. So through the years, it's a very tight community. So to both have input there, he has more because he's a legit associate professor, like a full-time tenure track, whatever. And I'm just a little adjunct, but that's fine. It's been great. It's been great. It's given us the freedom to do our own things and have our own schedules, and the kids are at school, and it has not been any kind of an issue to work together.
Sure. No, I love that. So did you and your husband meet back east then?
Yeah, on Broadway.
Okay,
That was it. I was in that show, and he replaced into the show, and we became friends pretty quickly and started jogging around Central Park, and like you do, that was like how we hung out. We jogged in Central Park, but we were very like, I don't want to, be with someone I work with. So that's the funny thing, to get to this point, we were like resisting because, that just seemed like a really stupid idea. And then months go by and the show's about to close, and we're like, why not? But interestingly enough, before we committed to actually spending any time together, we were like, he actually said it, I have this dream for my life and it involves a family and kids, and I have no interest in kind of going down this road if that's not what you want. And I was like, no one's ever said that, but that's all I've ever wanted. So it was kind of this magical moment, this walk. We took this walk down Manhattan to go visit some friends down in the 20s. And like, he just kind of was like, I just have to get all this off my chest and say that that's what my life needs to be. So I'm giving you the chance to say yes or no to that. And I was like, that's all I've ever wanted. So boom. And then we decided to work on it. Wild, right?
No, it's funny. Like, obviously the listeners can't see this, but it's like I have just like the goosebumps because there's something so nice about that. I constantly am telling people, like, get past like the fluff of the conversation. And like sometimes it's just important to like dive deep in and be like, this is genuinely who I am. And like, you may or may not accept this, but it is who I am. And if you do, we're probably gonna have a great relationship. And if not, that's okay as well. Right?
Yeah, it's a very cut to the chase mentality, which I deeply, deeply appreciate, because there's a lot of our times in life, we try to be what we think other people need us to be. Certainly in our weird entertainment business, we're always just like, anything you need, I can be that, I can be that, I can be that. And so you kind of forget to build yourself up and become who you are as well. That's another entire episode, is how to be a human in this business. But I was so used to just trying to please anybody, not just, I don't mean in a relationship, but I mean in life, constantly trying to be the right thing for everybody, that for someone to just lay it out and say, by the way, here's my plan. And for me to be able to express back, like, because I had not, being a young dancer in New York City, like, family goals didn't seem to be, that wasn't normal. It wasn't normal to try to have a family in this business. But every time I pictured my life and my future, I pictured children, always, since I was tiny. And I was like, I don't know how to put all these pieces together. And then at some point I was like, oh, you just do all the things you want to do at the same time. And then it's hard and you figure it out. But for us to know early on, we were both on the same page, was really cool. I have unfortunately seen recently several relationships break because they got to, several many years in and realized they'd never talked about that. And one person wants kids really bad, and one person never really saw that for their life. And they're like, oh, well then, I guess that's that. So to have that laid out really early on was it's kind of brilliant now that I think about it. I never really thought about it that deeply, but yeah, you make a good point.
It's really good. I love that. And I hope more listeners of the show can understand that. And maybe even at this point, I'm going to throw this out here, kind of weird, but like, how many people that are in a relationship now and they have children are willing to even talk about that now, saying, you know, I never even asked you if you were ready during all this, or what pressure I was putting on you to maybe have kids. I didn't even know if you wanted them, but here we are. You know, how amazing of an
That could,
opportunity.
yeah, that could be, you know, an uncomfortable couple hours, but I bet it's worth it.
Yeah,
You'd know yourselves better, wouldn't you?
right? Nothing a good bottle of wine wouldn't be able to handle,
Or
right?
five. Yeah, exactly.
So let's go now into then when you, because you've had the idea from the beginning of your relationship that we both want to have children. Did you both know
Yeah.
you wanted to have two, or was that like the number you wanted, or?
That's interesting. I am one of two. I have an older brother, so that
Okay.
was very familiar. That felt right. Um, David is an only child, so
Mhm.
he always felt a little ripped off about that, a little like he missed out on something. And so, when the discussion started to get more intense, and we started researching our options,
Mhm.
he did say, I always thought one. Actually, I thought, who can ask for more than that? You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But he was like, I don't want that to happen. I don't want that kid to feel like he himself felt that he was the only one. He's very, he feels like he missed out on a thing. And I
Mm.
didn't really understand that until he started to express that to me. And then I would ask questions about it and whatnot. Because I have a brother, and we were like awesome as little kids. And then we were like absolute enemies, mortal enemies for years. And then as we got older, we're super cool.
Cool.
Um, but that having that whole relationship is fascinating. And our kids now, older son, younger daughter, are 3 years apart. And it is watching them form how their relationship is going to be is the absolute coolest thing I've ever seen. And
Sure.
it's just this piece of sibling magic that obviously would not have happened if they were one single kids. You know what I mean?
Sure. So when you guys were exploring the options and decided that, like, how long ago, remind me, so with your son, like, when
Yeah.
did you first bring your son into the family?
So we went through a really cool process that was a semi-open adoption. And the
Mhm.
way the agency that we chose to work with works is most of the time, nothing's ever always, but most of the time, the adoptive families are chosen by the birth parents before the births. And so both of our situations occurred exactly that way. So we were chosen by Sam's birth mom several months before she gave birth. So we were in the hospital for the delivery, and we never missed even 1 second. And then the same thing happened with Olympia's birth parents as well. So, so Sam's 11 and a half, and it took us almost 2 years of process before we were placed with Sammy. So
Wow.
this has been, 13 years ago was our real start to it all.
Wow. How amazing. Like, isn't the whole hospital experience, isn't it such a trip? Like, and you're like, what is my role here right now? I know I'm important, but I don't feel like anybody else in the room feels like I am.
It's a weird thing, and I mean, obviously, I only have my own experience to
Sure.
draw on. But so there we are, and there's like family, and then there's this hugely interesting, awkward, not awkward, but um, deep situation of adoption too that is in there. And then there's family members from her side, and everyone seems to be fine and on the same page, but it's just, while it's correct, it's also heart-wrenching. And so you're trying to be there, and all we are is over the moon excited that our everything we ever saw for our life is finally coming true. But it was really important to also see and acknowledge and try to comprehend that everyone has losses and gains in this situation. And so to just really try to be present and feel the room, that's family members from her side, and everyone seems to be fine and on the same page, but it's just, while it's correct, it's also heart-wrenching. And so you're trying to be there, and all we are is over the moon excited that our everything we ever saw for our life is finally coming true. But it was really important to also see and acknowledge and try to comprehend that everyone has losses and gains in this situation. And so to just really try to be present and feel the room, that's what, just like one of the most painful things of her life. And that she believes it's all correct, and she has hope and love for it. And it was kind of like we're forever bonded by this moment, and here are my hopes for it. And we've remained close with them his entire life, which has been part of the magic of this whole situation, is through the semi-open situation, is that we have had exchanges with them his entire life. And we actually grew really close with the birth family and visit them at holidays and stuff. And so that woman and their extended family is just more family for our kids to be loved by and to love as well. So I really jumped off the hospital point there, but it's been amazing.
That is amazing. No, I appreciate that. I like just to hear that. One thing that I really find fun is you can tell the actor side of it. You're like, I'm going to take in the scene, and I'm gonna make sure I'm hearing everything that's going on so I can react responsibly.
Oh, I didn't mean to be that cliche, but I do.
No.
Even my own kids, I'm like, read the room, people. Just try to feel out what people are, and then feel where you fit. But you're right.
That's so good though, because if you don't do that, you miss out on so many opportunities. Like there was a prime thing just in general, like saying that, like when you're feeling the room, like of just when we were sitting in the coffee shop, not to bring it back to that, but that moment of just like looking over, like observing, like, oh, his shirt, I think his shirt says this, like really, first and foremost, your fashion was on point. And I admire good fashion when people, because it takes effort. It really does. It takes effort. And it shows more of a commitment to yourself, which in a good sense, and I really liked that. So seeing your shirt, and it was like, you know what? I don't know why. I'm going to take the opportunity just to say something. And now I have one of my top guests. I'm seriously loving this episode, like on the show because of that. And that's part of that, just like, observing the room, seeing
and feeling okay to just to join in too. That's the other thing, right? I love that you did that. I am not the most outgoing person. I play one on TV. I like to say, like, I know how to do that if I have to, but I'm rather shy, and so I may not have reached out. But I love it when you just interact with a stranger or a passerby, because aren't we all like the same people just trying to get through life? And it's nice to remember, like, oh yeah, we're all people. And it was fun to me that you knew the shirt and Schitt's Creek, which ended. I'm not caught up, so don't spoil it for me.
I won't.
Okay.
I think another great thing about that is I recently heard Kyle Cease he's a comedian, actor, but he does like transformation coaching kind of stuff now. And he was talking about it. He's like, what if we were just comfortable enough to go up to somebody instead of trying to be like, hey, how's the weather? And, like some ridiculous thing. What if you were comfortable enough to go up and be like, I don't know why, and I really don't have a clue of what I'm going to ask you right now, but I just felt like coming over and saying hi. Like, it would open you up so much more just to be like, oh, cool. Like, now I don't have to be fake back, right?
Yes. I kind of like that a lot. It's just I think that's a confidence in yourself that if this goes poorly, I'm going to be fine.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I do, if something sparks my eyes or my interest, or I see someone and someone who just like their smile just seems so full, like I have charged myself with saying those things out loud. So that's something in recent years I've actually tried to be on purpose, is the guy that walks up and is like, you have a cool jacket, have a good day, and like leaves. And like, I don't need anything. I just was like, why wouldn't I say that? That's like who doesn't love a compliment? So
yes,
I'm glad you spoke up.
Yes. And I think we can tie that in, because I got to do it for the show, but we'll tie it back into fatherhood or just parenting in general. Like, what a great skill set to teach our children, so that
Yes.
they're not afraid just to say hi. Like, we've set this whole, like, everyone's a stranger, like, in of course, like, keep away from the creeper. Like, like we have to be aware of what's going on, but also it's just to have your kids have the confidence to go up and say hi to somebody or make that compliment, like at the jacket or whatever, is a great skill set, I think.
I agree with you. And one of the things I was very shy, and I didn't feel very comfortable in my own skin as a kid, probably a myriad of reasons. But one of my goals as a father was to not instill that in them. And so we both, David and I, have been very on the same page about how we want to raise our children. And one of the things is self-confidence, is that to be okay talking to someone, we never allowed them to not look people in the eye. We tried to explain the difference between like revealing too much to a stranger and being a nice, polite human to everybody. And so my kids have, for the most part, always been very comfortable saying hello to someone, or thank you, or, oh, you dropped this here. Or, and I've actually heard them compliment a kid's t-shirt or a cool scooter or whatever they have, but they're not afraid to just talk, which I love. And on playgrounds, they are the fastest people to make best friends with anybody in the
Oh,
world. And I see that happen, and I get this wave of pride because they are sure of themselves enough to go put themselves in that position. And if it doesn't work out, they're not broken. They're not wounded. They might be like, that kid didn't want to play with me. And then I'd be like, that's cool. You don't always want to play with people either. Go find
right.
something else. And we just move on quickly. And they're very self-confident, very resilient. I also am proud, back to fashion. My daughter has this like sense of style that I can't even explain. And we never tried to like shut that down or tell her what to be ever. And so letting them become who they are has helped them have this confidence. So that's not all me. A lot of that's hardwiring and the world, but I do take pride that we've done what we needed to do to help push them in that direction.
Do you feel like when growing up, because there's a lot of things that I implement with my children, it's because I felt either a lack of, or I felt like my parents, it's not necessarily didn't give me the opportunity, but, because it wasn't like a traditional family and things like that growing up, it's like I felt like, how do you say it? Like I was in a situation where I look now at more of the things that I didn't have as a child or didn't like, enjoy growing up, and am hyper aware with my children of like not putting those like either stereotypes or, like who they have to be and all of that like in their minds, because I do understand that they are their own individual at the end of the day, that they're going to grow up to hopefully be confident and successful human beings in their own way, not because of what myself or my wife or anybody else wants them to be, but for who they want to be. And letting them know that their love and that appreciation for themselves and is enough. It just is enough.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
we could all benefit from remembering that.
yeah,
Um,
and it's
you have like
hard, right?
a 5-layer thing to respond to, but the responding to what you felt like you missed out on as a child or didn't have, I think that anybody's parenting style is a culmination of everything they loved about, and to really rebel against the things that they think went wrong,
Hmm.
or and that's what we're doing. So yeah, there are some very pointed things that I'm like, this was always controlled for me, and I don't think that was a great plan. And so I'm going to not have any control over that, like picking your own clothes to go to school.
Yeah.
There's appropriateness, there's age appropriateness, and if there's picture day, I'm going to have a say about it. But other than that, I'm like, you put that together, who cares, whatever. But there's something about kids making choices for themselves, right or wrong, especially these small choices that are not life or death choices, but it builds their ability and their self concept and their ability to have self-confidence. And so letting them figure out who they are, obviously within the respectful bounds of life and society, I'm
Sure.
all for it. And I feel like they're super duper hardwired to be who they are. I mean, if I can take my own brother and me, my brother and I are the most different people in the universe with the exact same parents. So obviously there's hardwiring involved. It's all nurture. And
Mm.
so to then for our kids to just figure out who they are, they're teaching us constantly who they are and who they want to be. And then I think our gig is to hear it, thumbs up it, and push them into it, or just stand back and let it happen, because they're kind of amazing.
Yes,
They're
and I love
constantly
that.
surprising me.
Absolutely. What is your biggest takeaway or lesson you believe your children are teaching you by being a parent?
Be who you are and trust it.
Mm.
That's really it. Which I hoped for them, and they're doing it, and they're just very certain. They have such a self concept of what they are, what they want to be, and that's not all superficial like interests or whatever. I mean, those are very important, but sometimes it's like a life philosophy or a concept about Oh, the way they observe somebody, and it just kind of blows my mind that they are that deep at a young age. And then all that flies away, and we're fighting about, how much dessert they can have or something, and that's more normal. But every once in a while, these little nuggets of just like, you are a fascinating human right now, and I love it. And to like trust the kids, the kids are all right.
It's not one like that one's so difficult. And I don't know if it's because those critical years where you felt like your whole purpose is just to keep them alive and breathing.
That is your whole purpose.
It really is, but it's like it's so ingrained because it's day and day and day, and that all of a sudden they start becoming a little independent, and you're like, wait a minute, your brain, like, it's almost hard for your brain to process it, and
Yeah,
it's like, is this child doing and saying things on their own without
yeah,
me feeding it to them or telling them this is how they should be, and not
yeah.
constantly being like, don't touch that, don't do this, don't do that.
It's fascinating.
It
It's
is.
fascinating. And that really, oddly enough, came kind of parallel with reading ability. Watching them learn to read is still one of the most exciting, thrilling things. One from just the understanding that there are things out there that mean stuff. Like, what's that sign say? What's that mean? Like they can see that is supposed to mean something, but they don't know how to translate it. And then they're asking you, and you say it. And then all of a sudden you get the like, hey, that says go, doesn't it? And hey, that says this. Or they learn logos, so they think they're reading, but they're just familiar. And then all of a sudden they're just reading and reading. And I just step back and go like, that little brain that needed to be taught like what a spoon is now reading words and sentences and getting it, and then saying the word. I think it's fascinating. But the more this concept of me really standing back and saying, oh, that brain is churning on its own without me handing it every piece of information all the time, it kind of went parallel with the reading. I don't know why. That was a big parallel for me. But also prior to that, my little boy, like, we were very unviolent, ungun, unblaster kind of people. This is a weird story to tell in this situation, but he, from the second he could walk and grab things, would pick up a stick and pretend it was a gun, which I'm like, I don't even know where you saw that, or was obsessed with a ball and knew to throw it and run after it. And I'm like, okay, so you're your own dude, and you know what you want it to be. And it's fascinating. But trusting that as they get older, as they get in weirder situations and they see stuff on TV that you're not necessarily observing at the same time, or like, oh, let me explain that to you.
Yes.
You're not buffering it all at all times, to just hear them sometimes and let them talk. And sometimes they come out with something that you feel like you need to, like a fire you need to put out right away. And then
Yeah.
you let them get 3 sentences later and you realize they weren't taking it that way, or they didn't understand it as deeply as you thought, or they already worked through it and they're fine. So sometimes I just need to remember to shut up.
And I'm with you there, Eric. Seriously, like I do the same thing. It's like almost respond before I need to respond. And it's like, oh, if I would have waited like 2 more minutes, this, like, he was just joking or something. But it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. We've been binge watching a TV show called Kidding. Have you heard of that? The Jim Carrey one?
uh-uh.
It is super weird and super dark, very dark comedy, very screwy. But there was a concept the other day, and all his whole point was, your parents aren't really listening to you. I mean, I'm not trying to spoil anything, but that was like a theme. They're not listening to you, and I will. Anyway, my point was, this
Yeah.
show was laid into this concept of not really listening, that we pretend to listen, but we're not really listening. And it kind of has haunted me ever since.
So and I'm sure there's like kind of explains those long-term um, effects that not having parents that listen to you actually will have on your life.
Yeah, I think, but what you said about quick response and not really hearing it all the way is something we probably can all work on. So I don't know if I've been any better at. I mean, honestly, we watched that a few days ago, and I got to tell you, I don't want to talk about the pandemic too much, but the being home, the constant, and the trying to provide value for everybody, and to try to decide that you magically are going to be, you know, write a novel or whatever. Like, I have to accomplish all these things. And then the other day, so I had been super positive and peppy and trying to keep going, and well, this is just what it is and let's make it work and la la la. And then like I had like the 2 or 3 darkest days where I just felt wrong and I felt unavailable and I knew I had nothing for anybody else. And I was just kind of like quiet, and I just floated through the day, and I wasn't nice, and I was very short and quick response, and I didn't know what to do with any of that. Like, I didn't know, except I kept thinking, well, if my student or my kid or somebody said that to me, I'd be like, it's okay, just be patient with yourself, wait it out, you're going to feel better in a day or two. And so I kind of put kid gloves on with myself and just let it happen. And then I started to climb out, and then I saw that episode about the not listening, and I was like, that's what I need to do. I need to just shut up and start listening to these kids more, and they'll bring me back. And you know, because a million times a day my son is like, Dad, let me tell you about this video game thing, and I want to tell you, and he's like rattling details, and sometimes it's so much that I just have to say, like, you're just spewing details at me and I can't even follow you. He's not the clearest storyteller I've ever heard. But, and I'll be like, can I just not have that right now? You know, and I would literally not let him say. I wasn't trying to be mean, but it just felt unimportant, scattered, crazy, too much for me to handle. But then I was like, but he wanted me to know something. He wanted to come and tell me something. And it doesn't matter what it is. It shouldn't have mattered if it was important. I put air quotes on that. Or if it was meaningless to me. What I loved, and I had to remember, is he had some experience that made him excited. And the person he wanted to tell was this guy. And I just need to shut up and let him tell me. And then I felt really bad about it, and I judged myself for a long time. And then I decided that wasn't getting me anywhere, and that I just needed to like forgive myself and move on and try to be a little different. And so I've tried to be a better listener for like a day and a half now.
Wow. No, I think that's so good. And I hope that anybody that's listening to this right now really resonates with that. Almost, I'd encourage people to actually rewind that, listen to that part, because you nailed it when you said it wasn't necessarily important to me, but my son felt it was so important to him that he wanted to share it with me.
Yeah.
And the fact that they come to you as that person to share that story with.
Yeah.
That's the win right there, right?
That's what I needed to remember. That's my job. Is to be that guy. And I was hearing myself shutting it down so often that I'm like, oh, he's going to stop doing that one day. Because that's what we all do, right? If you get met with a resistance, met with a wall, you just stop going that direction after a while. And so it was like like my brain was starting to see my own actions and judge myself about it. And then that stupid TV show, it's not stupid, it's actually really good. But that TV show kind of like put it into words at me. And I was like, I was onto something, and I'm right. And I have to change it right this second. So I don't know. I think I'm like 50% better, but always something to work for.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, even if we're 1% better as parents, isn't that a win, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it is. I mean, it's always just we're all guessing, aren't we?
Totally.
I sometimes say that, you know, this isn't new technology. This has all been done before. People have been parents and kids have been kids for a million years, but the way it works, and we know now different and better things. And so it is a constantly evolving guessing game of trying to do the right thing. Anyway, that was just a big thing that came to me. That's what came out of this pandemic, is be a better person and listen to your own kids.
So good. Like, and if nothing else comes from it, that's a big like plus. I mean, honestly, like if everyone keeps saying like, what if the pause button is released tomorrow and we all go back to, you know, quote unquote, like a normal society. And it's like, well, if we haven't learned anything through it, isn't it kind of a wasted opportunity then?
Yeah. And I think that's how I felt about the like productivity and what, you know, I have Operation Pandemic abs. I'm like, well, if I'm stuck at home, I'm going to do crunches all day or whatever, just like, so that I won't say that time was wasted. And so I think putting that effort into my relationship and my children is probably a great idea as well, instead of just my vanity.
Sure. The one thing now, because you said that, is what effect do you think having children and raising your kids with your husband like has had on your actual relationship? Do you think it's made it stronger? Do you feel like obviously we all have moments, and I'm not like digging like, hey, tell me what happened. Like, but like ultimately, what do you think's the biggest thing that changed with having kids?
That's interesting because a lot of people say, like, did it just upheave your entire world? Is everything just different? And I think David and I, knowing that's where we always wanted to be, we had created a life that worked great and we had great careers and everything was fine. And um, we bought a house in New Jersey. All this stuff was happening, but it felt like a beautiful, complete donut with like a hole in the middle. And
Mhm.
then the addition finally of the child just made it into a complete whole unit. Like it felt like I didn't, it felt like the completion of a thing that we've been waiting for rather than an explosion or an upheaval. Um, it was the thing I guess we always were meant to do and to be. And um, there are days that is very hard to remember,
Yes.
but I do try. I think that it we've been a great team. We've had to really come together on times and figure things out when maybe we would just like explode and take space and walk away.
Sure.
Um, and man, it's not cute or comfortable sometimes, but it worth it. Always worth it. I say it may not always be easy, but it's always worth it. And that's so the biggest change. I mean, I just think thinking bigger than ourselves was the biggest change.
Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of people say, "Oh, you have a relationship, you have this unbelievable relationship, and you always love being with each other." And then you bring the kids involved, and it's all about the kids. And it's like, yes and no. Like, because there's moments, it's like, because I see Katie playing with the kids, like super attracted to her because I'm like, you're not only this powerful, beautiful woman, but then you're also this loving, like guiding, like teacher, and doing all these things with like the kids, and it's just so great. And I think we lose that believing these kids create divide. And it's like, yeah, it creates divide if you're believing your children are going to fulfill some void in your life. It's like they can only do so much, right? And then it's like maybe not fair to think that your children are the reason for your happiness. It's like,
Not fair. Not fair.
yeah. And it's like they become part of your happiness, but they don't, I don't believe, have to be the center of it, right? Because there's a chance that if it's like anything else, if you believed that David had to make you happy all the time, it's like not fair for David because
No,
that's unexpected, you know. Uh,
agree.
yeah, so it's just being able to. I don't even know where I'm going with that,
I don't know.
and that's okay too. And I think just going back to that whole concept you had though, understanding that your children can make and complete part of the like the wholeness, that they don't have to be like a separate unit. It doesn't have to be I have my relationship, then I have my children. It's like it can all be one and the same.
Yeah, it's a big messy blob mushed
Yeah.
together.
And to your point, it's a beautiful blob some days, and other
Yeah.
days you're just like, I just want to get a van and cruise to the coast and surf all day.
Ooh, that sounds kind of nice. I've never surfed,
Right?
but I'm down for it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, it's been really cool. I also think what you said about is like watching your spouse interact with the kids illuminates things about them that you may not have seen them in that light, and that's a cool thing. I was always the that fun guy that all the kids came running up to. So whatever. But then when we had a baby, I did not know what a like infant whisperer David was. And he was magic with the swaddle. Like he just was magic with this tiny infant. And I was like, when they're 3, they're going to think I'm the funnest thing in the world. And of course I grew to love and I had to learn, but he has like an innate ability for babies. That's incredible. And so watching that um, was a very cool thing to observe about the guy that I thought I already knew. We're constantly learning about each other. And then even now, there are days when I see him interact and I'm like, that's a good dad right there. And then I like him even more. And then there are days when I just try to avoid all of them at all times,
Right.
like you do.
Absolutely. So the final question I would have is, what advice do you have for other couples that are going through a similar situation where you were, where you're like, we're ready to start a family, we don't know how to get into it or what to do? Like, what advice do you have for those
Oof,
individuals?
that's a big one. I mean, I think it would be to talk about everything and read all sorts of things and talk to everybody who's done it, because I think there's an unwritten expectation that people who become parents just magically know how to do that. And that's not really true. And there are lots of versions, and you can only come from it from your frame of reference. So I would say to expand your frame of reference, and then you have a lot of bits of information to take from. That sounds very clinical and very textbook, but David and I read a lot of books about parenting and theories on parenting and whatever, and that sounds really weird, but it was something we felt like we could control, I think, in that moment. But because of it, we talked about ways of behavior, ways of speaking to people, ways of being on the same page as a united front, and what we thought about all those things. And so we ended up we started this journey being very much on the same page, and understanding a way we wanted to be. And that was really, really helpful, and took some pressure off of like, oh no, there's a problem, we never talked about how to react to this problem or whatever. We had a plan, and we've constantly changed the plan and evolved it together. And ultimately, sometimes we're terrible at the plan, but at least there's some frame of reference that we both spent the time together about. And just talking to so many friends and then sharing what we're learning about their parenting experience helped us kind of formulate a structure of how to start to navigate it. That's that one part of your point.
I love that. It's
Um,
just, no, I really do. I love that you said that. I love that it was all about, we took the control that we believe we could have. We expanded our knowledge on everything, and then we went in it as a united front.
yeah,
And we all know as parents, sometimes the things that, even though we're united and we go in it, life happens, things change,
you
Hence the
gotta
moment,
evolve.
when you first take your child from the hospital and you're like, wait a minute, this wasn't in a book. Like, this wasn't like, you're letting me take this child home, um,
Crazy.
right? Crazy moment. Um, anyway, Eric, if
Yes.
someone wanted to reach out to you and they just had a question, or they just want to follow you, like, what's the best way for them to do that?
I guess through, like, you can find anyone on the Instagram, right? So I
Yes.
should probably look up my Instagram handle and tell you what it is right now. It's at ED Scotto, SCIOTTO. That's my name over there, and it's very easy to message a person. So I think that's my answer.
I love that. Okay.
And I'm happy to be available.
Thank you so much for taking your
Thank you.
time to be on the show. It was incredible. You were great.
Oh,
And
thanks.
yes, I can't wait for people to actually hear this, listening to it on iTunes, SoundCloud, all the other ones, people. I'm not going to tell you which ones, but anyway, thank you again.
Thank you.